Hi everybody, my name is Aaliyah Sterling, and I'm a third-year kinesiology student with a psych minor. And today I'll be doing a presentation on scope and review on fake, imposter, or deceptive participants in virtual research. My team members were Yatunde, Arvin, and Temi, and my supervisor was Dr. Michael Kalu. This will be my overview today. Okay. So since the shift to online research, there has been a growing issue that has emerged where fake participants are starting to sign up for virtual interviews and focus groups. They may use false identities or misrepresent eligibility or even be automated bots, and this not only wastes resources, but can also distort study findings and undermine trust in research. For my definitions and reasons, fraudulent participants are when people participate in research but misrepresent themselves or their responses. This could be for financial incentives, malicious intent, or other reasons, and we focused on studies using virtual interviews or focus groups since the remote setting can make it harder to verify who's actually participating. Okay, so my impact. The impact of fake participants includes compromising data quality, threatening the ethical obligations owed to genuine participants, and wasting resources such as time and funding. If fraudulent data is incorporated in published findings, it can distort results, undermine trust in the research process, and potentially lead to misguided policies or ineffective interventions. Okay, so for our method, we use the scoping review and we use the ARCSCI and O'Malley framework. And this including defining, identifying, our study selection, charting, and collecting our data. Okay, so first for defining, we defined our research question, and it was what are the experiences or strategies employed by researchers in mitigating, and mitigating can mean managing, preventing, or detecting fake participants during virtual interviews of participants. Then we identified relevant studies. For this, we searched databases like PubMed, Embase, Scopus, Google Scholar, and SINHA, and we included English peer-reviewed studies from 2010 and onwards that were qualitative or mixed methods and focused on virtual interviews or focus groups. We excluded purely quantitative studies that were non-virtual research and anything that was not peer-reviewed, and our screening and selection was done in Providence. Okay, so for our study selection, we use the PCC framework, and this includes population, concept, and context. For inclusion criteria, participants engaged in virtual, remote, or online interviews or focus groups. Our concept was presence of fake, imposter, fraudulent, or deceptive participants, and our context was research conducted using digital platforms for data collection. For exclusion criteria, for our population, it was studies not involving human subjects. Our concept was studies that do not address fake participants, and our context was studies focused on clinical fraud, financial fraud, or identity theft. Okay, so this was our data when we did it in Confidence, and as you can see, we started out with 1,013 studies, and then the different databases that we used to screen our data. Then we did our screening. When we finished, our study screen were 832, our retrieval was 57, and our studies assessed for eligibility was also 57. After we were done, we finished with 23 articles to include in our data extraction. Okay, so for our collection of our results, as I said before, we ended up with 23 articles. Out of these 23 articles, 13 studies were qualitative, 1 was quantitative, and then 4 was mixed methods, and 5 were methodological commentary or case reports. For our sample size, the minimum was an article from Rohil 2022, and our max was 4,163 from Chen et al. Okay, so for our results, we ended up with 3 countries, all within North America, and 1 out of North America and the United States, being the most dominant, as you can see. So to answer my research question from before, the strategies that were identified in all of the articles. So for the detection method, there were technical checks which included CAPTCHA, reCAPTCHA, IP address, and geolocation monitoring, device fingerprinting, metadata review, and completion times, duplicate accounts, and suspicious email patterns. There was also inconsistency spotting, which means that comparing demographic or medical history responses across platforms, re-asking questions in different ways and identifying contradictions or vague answers. And then there was also behavioral cues that they tried to identify, which was like them refusing to turn on their cameras, or scripted or overly general responses, and inability to elaborate on lived experiences. For the prevention strategies, they did reducing disclosure of eligibility criteria and incentive detail in public recruitment materials. They also used targeted or closed network recruitment instead of open social media ads, and they required live pre-interview screening, phone or video with open-ended verification questions. They also employed trap or knowledge-based questions to confirm authenticity, and their management was exclusion, which is excluding suspected fraudulent data, pausing recruitment, and balancing fraud prevention with ethical considerations. Some gaps within the literature that we identified was that there's no standardized protocol for detecting fake participants in qualitative research, and many studies didn't mention if they had fraud checks in place. Also, while quantitative survey fraud is discussed more in the literature, there's less on fraud in interviews and focus groups. Limitations was a risk of excluding genuine participants, resource and time burden, technical limitations, and data quality risk despite precautions, and ethical tension. My reflection is, doing this review really highlighted how vulnerable online research can be without proper checks in place. It's made me more aware of the ethical responsibility researchers have to verify participants and protect the integrity of their data. This is my reference page.
Okay, Leah, thank you so much. So, any question?
I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
Thank you, really important topic. I was wondering if you could comment on what proportion of online data are flagged as unreliable or problematic?
What proportion of online data?
Like, of these studies that you reviewed, how many, like, I imagine it might even be on the rise, but did you get a sense of, is it like 50% of data is tossed or flagged?
Out of the 1,000 articles?
No, of the ones that you studied, the 22. Did they comment on, like, how severe is the problem?
Very severe, because out of the 23 articles, they all identified people who tried to impersonate to get things. So majority of my articles included marginalized groups or people who, because there's a lot of incentives, or when you look at stuff that include people that want to do research on people, it's usually marginalized communities or people who cannot, I don't want to say poor, but yeah, marginalized communities. And a lot of my study included stuff like people like that. So I would say it's a high number.
So are you saying that these disadvantaged populations are more likely to sign up for financial gain or something, or is that?
Yeah,
okay.
more so, yeah. I'm saying that the research that are put out in the world are mostly for these people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. So, one more question? Okay.
You mentioned ethical tension. Can you speak more on that?
Say that again.
You
Ethical
mentioned
tension. Ethical tension.
Oh, ethical tension. Yeah. I think, where did I? Oh, it was my limitation. I didn't have enough time because you said 2
Yeah,
minutes.
sure.
But I'll tell more because I wanted to. So, Okay, so it was one of our limitations, and basically it was like balancing the trust between participation and like also inclusivity, which was like they wanted to balance skepticism and surveillance that created discomfort. Because you know that when people, there are genuine people who sign up for these stuff that are actually genuine, but sometimes not everybody wants to be on camera, not everybody wants to disclose their ID or their citizenship or their PR. There's a lot of people that are immigrants and they don't want to disclose all of these things. And these are actually genuine people that want to benefit from the study. And then there's actually people who are fake and they're not, they don't want to benefit from the study. They want to benefit from the study, but they're not genuine. And so it was like a line. It was a thin line between balancing, okay, is this person actually genuine, but they just don't want to show their face, or they just don't want to show you their ID or all of that, and then is this person actually a fake person that are pretending to be the other person?
Thank you so much.
That was good.
Okay, one more question. Yep.
It's more of a comment, but it kind of relates to your presentation when we were talking a little bit about participants and being vulnerable and using specific lenses when you're talking to participants or looking at certain demographics, because there can be this idea of well, there is history of BIPOC or other people of color, disabled individuals who have been taken advantage when it comes to research. So I think it really made me think of looking at things through a particular lens. So that was a comment I wanted to add.
Yeah, because when I was looking at it too, it was like that. And then a lot of this, the as you can see from the results, there's not much diversity. Like it was all Canada, United States, Australia, United Kingdom. So it was not a lot of diversity. So for the study, especially with marginalized groups, it was a lot of people who were immigrants, and it was very sensitive for them to like be able to trust that, okay, be vulnerable and trust the research, right? So yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.